4 years later left Virginia with a massive surplus. So that's the second thing about Mark that is special and why we need to return him, not just for the good of the Commonwealth, but also for the good of the country. Now the last thing is the thing that being in the Senate for about 16 months may be the thing that's the most necessary. Mark is very, very skilled at working together across the aisle, Democrat and Republican. And I know sometimes, you know, I mean, look, I read blogs and everything too. I mean, sometimes all of Mark's outreach, or when I do outreach to the other side, it's about like, why are you doing that? Well, we're doing it because we put America first. And America is a country where there's America is a country, and Virginia is a state where everybody's entitled to representation regardless of their political affiliation. And we run, I certainly run as a proud Democrat. I've been a proud Democrat since the day I learned my parents were Republicans. I mean, that was all it took. But we all, everybody in this room, I know so many of you personally, we have an idea, stand proud for your principles and values, but after an election is over, you've got to work together. Now, before I came to the Senate, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of good working together. And I attributed almost all of it to partisanship. You know, the R's and D's, because of gerrymandering and a whole series of things, there was spread between, ideological spread between the party. But you know what I've learned in the Senate, and this has probably been the one thing that's been a surprise to me, and kind of an unpleasant surprise, is that more dysfunction than you might think is not because of partisanship, it's because people don't even spend time listening to each other.
Exactly.
It's communication. It's poor group dynamics. Now, partisanship is part of all of this, but think of a relative you have that's different politically than you, right? And I imagine all of you are going to have immediately somebody come to mind, or maybe more than one person. I know I do, right? Now, there will be somebody you're very close to who's politically very different than you, but you know there are a number of things that person, whoever you have in your mind, there are a number of things you agree on with that person. That's because you know them very well, and you've spent time with them. And you've spent time enough to learn, okay, well, 80% of the time we're going to disagree, but here's some issues we really care about in common. What I see in the Senate that is painful, and others have mentioned this, John Warner, for example, has talked about it a lot, is people don't spend enough time with each other to get to know, okay, we disagree most of the time, but wow, here's an issue that we really care about together. And Mark learned, and I saw this when he was governor at a very tough time, that it wasn't just about outreach to people with different political views, but it was also about spending the time to court people and try to get them on board, but also to listen to them and ask what mattered to them and what's important to them. And so what you've seen Mark do during the time that he's been in the Senate, whether it's working on reforms in the fiscal system or trying to figure out the right path forward for the federal government to play an appropriate role in the housing industry, Mark is always going to sit down with somebody on the other side of the aisle and do a lot of listening, and then try to find common ground. Now, this is what you do. Everyone in this room, you're all in groups, you know, family, a parish council, a school board, a PTA, you're in local elected bodies, you're in companies or organizations, or you work with coworkers. You all know that this is the key to success. None of us are in, I guess if you're a hermit, but I don't think I have any here. It's not my way or the highway. It's all about listening and trying to find compromise. And I don't think there is anybody in the Senate who is better at this, who just does it as instinctively, doesn't have to kind of strategize about it, it's just the way he approaches things, as Mark. So those are the three things that I really wanted to just kind of put on the table and say, this is an important race for Virginia because we've been lucky to be represented by Mark at the state level and at the federal level.